Beth Jacobson.
I'm Pam Lathrop.
And this is the October edition of the Beloit Today Show. Pam, we have a lot to cover today.
Yes, we do.
Who are you interviewing today?
Well, my interview is going to come at the end of the show, and it's going to be with Bob Pokorny. He's going to be talking about some of the headstone restorations in the city cemeteries.
And I'll be interviewing Captain Molland. We're going to talk about a little bit about traffic safety around the schools this year. We just want everyone to remember that the schools have been a little bit redesigned, and we want people to remember to be safe around the children, both when school's in session and when it's not, just so we can form habits. And then also Rebecca Lemire, our city clerk, is going to talk to us about voter ID. For a long time we didn't have voter IDs, and now, well, we did, and then you didn't have to bring your photo ID, and now you do again. So on the election on November 11th or November 4th, Rebecca is going to tell us about the appropriate ways to bring proper ID to vote.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if you have questions, you can call her.
Right, as always. So stay tuned. We have a lot of information. Hi, I'm here with Rebecca Lemire, our city clerk, and we're here today to talk about the ever-changing voter ID rules, but also just to kind of remind our residents about the city clerk's office. So, Rebecca, let's talk a little bit about yourself. How long have you been with the city, and then how long have you been the clerk?
I've been with the city of Beloit for about 7.5 years, and I've been the clerk for almost 4 years.
Now, when people, I know what we use the city clerk's office for in our office. They always have the answers, they always have the documents we're looking for. But for people that don't know what the clerk's office does, even though you guys do a ton of stuff, can you talk about licensing and applications and things that you do sort of on a general basis?
Sure. We administer several license processes for the city, including bartenders and alcohol licensing. That's the main one. And then we also do smaller scale licensing for tree trimmers and some of the other little known things that we require licenses for.
Sure.
And we also administer elections, which is one of the main things aside from providing support for the city council and records management, public information. Those are all things we do, but the election administration, especially this time of year, is our main focus for our office.
Right, and so we know that that's important because a couple years ago you had 6 elections.
Yes, and 2012 was a banner year for elections. It kept our office very busy.
So to administer an election, what people might not know is, first of all, Rebecca's job is extremely difficult because we have 9 polling locations, but in addition to that, there's a lot of work that goes in on the front end before an election and also on the back end. So can you talk about some of the things that you do prior to the election?
Sure. We have a lot of training that we go through. I go through training to make sure that I have all the up-to-date information, and then I in turn train all of our election workers and chief inspectors. We register voters, we pack all the supplies and materials for the polling places, we coordinate with the administrators of those polling places to make sure we can use that facility and how it's going to be unlocked, and we test equipment, so we place an order for ballots, we proof the ballots, we receive the ballots, we send out absentee ballots, then we use the test ballots to test our election equipment. It's a very long process. It's about 2 months preparation for every election, and then after the election we have to record all the votes through a statewide voter registration system. And by record the votes, I just mean the people who voted, not who they voted for, because obviously that part is anonymous.
Sure.
And then we have several reports that we need to do for the state.
So after So after the elections, when if it's ever a close call, you'll see, well, they're still waiting to verify votes, and that's because they really have to count every single vote that comes in. So the night of, they usually go by a majority number, but if it's really tight, that's what your office is doing, is they're providing those numbers to really do the final total count, correct?
Right, and then state law in 2011 changed to allow absentee voters to provide their ballots to us by the Friday after the election at 5 o'clock. So If they're mailed by election day, there's still 3 more days that we can receive absentee ballots in the mail, and those do have to be counted at the Municipal Board of Canvass, which is the Monday after the election.
Oh my gosh.
Additional votes can come in after election day.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that. So let's talk about the new voter ID law. It feels like it changed. It feels like we had voter ID and then we didn't, and then now we do again.
Right.
So what does that mean when I go to vote? I have to present my ID now?
Right. In part of the 2011 Wisconsin Act 23 that made changes throughout the election administration process, one of those changes was requiring a photo ID to cast a ballot. That there was a federal injunction against that piece of the law since the February election in 2012. So after the February election in 2012, we did have that requirement for ID, and then it went away for a while, and now the a federal appeals court has lifted that injunction, so now voter ID is required for the November 4th general election.
So the first 2 elections this year, you didn't need the voter ID, but now you do. Now, what are the types of IDs that are sufficient? Does it have to have a photo on it, or is it just an ID?
There are very specific types of IDs that are acceptable forms of proof of identification for voting. The first and the one that most people have is a Wisconsin driver's license. If you have a Wisconsin driver's license that is unexpired or expired after the November 6th, 2012 election, that is a valid form of proof of identification. So most people do have that. If you don't have a driver's license, if you don't drive, you may have a Wisconsin state ID. Those are also acceptable with the same caveat that it's either unexpired or expired after the November 6th, 2012 general election. Other acceptable forms of proof of identification include a military ID, a U.S. passport, a certificate of naturalization that was issued not earlier than 2 years before the date of the election, an unexpired driving receipt issued by the Wisconsin DOT, an unexpired identification card receipt issued by the Wisconsin DOT, a identification card from a federally recognized Indian tribe in Wisconsin, or a student ID with the student ID has to have a photo of the student, a signature of the student, a date of issuance, and an expiration date that's not later than 2 years after the issuance date.
Oh my gosh.
And students also need to bring proof of enrollment in conjunction with that ID to make it valid.
So what we should do is, first of all, for students, if you aren't registered to vote, you should come to the clerk's office prior to November election and register if you wish to vote, if, Beloit's where you're going to vote. And then be prepared to bring your ID when you vote on November 4th, if that's what you're in fact doing.
And in order to register to vote in Wisconsin, you do have to prove residency. So this is a law that changed in April of 2014, that at all times you need to prove residency in order to register to vote.
Well, Rebecca, this is a lot of information to take in, and we appreciate the constant changes that your office can keep up with and notify our residents. If anyone has questions, you can call the clerk's office at
364-6680.
And thank you again for being on our show. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
2-1. Hi, I'm here with Captain Molland, and we are here today to talk about safety around school zones. So the school year is off to a good start. From what I understand, we're about halfway through the first semester, but our residents are still kind of learning the new layouts of the schools, right?
Yes, they are.
So what's happened is that there was a referendum, and almost every single school in the city of Beloit has been, well, for the school district of Beloit, I would say, has been either remodeled or added onto, and with that, the footprint of many of the schools have changed. So the drop-off zones and the pickup zones have adjusted. So with that, our parents also need to adjust. So let's talk about some challenges we've been having. Is it just people aren't used to the drop-off zones?
It's a combination of several things. They're not used to the new layouts at the schools, and also it's just being aware that school kids are back in the school, and it's understanding the traffic laws. The Beloit Police Department and the School District of Beloit have an ongoing partnership, and we feel safety is paramount. And we also try to educate people through our Facebook page and also social media, just to sit there and understand that we want voluntary compliance. We want people to slow down when they're near those school zones. And if we don't get that voluntary compliance, we have officers monitoring those school zones to not only educate, but also issue citations if that's necessary. And we also want people to know that those citations start out at about $200, and the fines double in school zones.
So school zones are taken very seriously, a lot like construction zones. So children, vulnerable workers on the highway, I mean, the state really takes this seriously. And so what we do is we make sure that people know that these are times when you really need to slow down. Now, there's a couple schools, I'm thinking of Robinson on Cranston, even when school's not in session, and you see that mile per hour sign, you know, most people instantly think, oh, I need to slow down, this is a school zone. But what people also need to be aware of is that on tighter streets, like we're in front of Hackett today, so on West Grand, children sometimes dart between cars, and people really need to be aware, not just of other drivers, but of pedestrians.
Yes, they do.
So keep that in mind when you are dropping off students, or even if you're just commuting to work. That's also another issue, is the commuters that come through the school zones.
Yes, many kids will either ride their bikes to school or walk to school, or the parents park a block or two away and the kids will walk from that point. So just constantly being aware of what's around you, knowing that kids can dart out from anywhere, and always be a defensive driver and knowing what's going on around you.
Now, another partnership that the city has with the school district are the crosswalk attendants. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yes, we have crossing guards that are assigned to different areas in the city that the school district feels are high hazards areas that they assign them to. And crossing guards are very similar to law enforcement. When they step out into the crosswalk area to tell vehicles to stop, by law you have to stop for pedestrians crossing in the crosswalk, and also for the crossing guard. If you fail to stop for the crossing guard, you can be issued a citation.
And I've been to our court on Thursday to view, of course, not because I had a ticket. And people have gotten tickets for passing. Not only passing school buses, but also for violating the crossing guards when they tell you to cross. Now, when you do that, keep in mind that they can see your license plate and they can see your description, and potentially they might see you every day if you drop off your child. I know I pass Todd's school on the way to work every day, and I know both crossing guards. I wave at them, I slow down, but that's something that is highly important to us. Are there any other safety measures you can think of around school zones that are important for drivers?
The biggest one is just slow down and take your time. It's kind of a perception thing. Parents will either park farther away and then dart across the street because it's closer than just going down to the crosswalk. So taking those couple extra minutes to use proper crosswalks and make sure that everyone's safe, by taking those 2 extra minutes, not only will the students be safe, but the community will also be safe.
And that's another thing the school district talked to the city about, and we've met, and we want to remind people that you really need to cross at the crosswalk, not only for yourself, but these are habits that we want to create for our students. So we don't want children to think that they can cross the road in the middle of the road. We want them to be going to the crosswalk, both when they're on their bikes and when they're on their feet. So that's been a major issue for us. We're really excited that the school year is continuing. It's going well.
Yes, it is.
And we enjoy our partnership with the school district of Beloit. Are there any other things you want to think of?
No, I just want to make sure that people review the traffic signs, look for the signs, make sure that you're aware of when you're driving, and just be safe out there. And the school district of Beloit and the Beloit Police Department and the city of Beloit are committed to making sure that our students are safe in the community.
Captain Mullen, thanks for being on our show.
Thank you very much.
As always.
As you can see today, I'm standing in the cemetery. This is Oakwood Cemetery with Bob Pokorny, who's the cemetery coordinator for the city of Beloit. Bob has a very interesting story to tell about the restoration of some of these headstones and grave markers. And the restoration is not just due to vandalism, it's due to wear and tear on some of these old markers. As you can see behind us, there's beautiful marker, a family plot actually. And when does that date back to?
Most of the ones that restored date back to the mid-1800s.
So this cemetery dates back to 1840, you said.
Correct.
Earlier.
Yep.
So there's a lot of restoration that needs to go on here. How did you come up with this idea?
Okay, well, doing a restoration ourselves, a chance meeting with a company that does it professionally, I just wanted to pick their brain. Make sure the techniques I was doing were correct and that were going to last.
Elmer's
And-
glue wasn't.
Right. Exactly. And so they were excited that we were even doing it. So they actually agreed to meet here and just to go over what we were doing here. And by getting the tips and the techniques and ideas from them, they were, by the way, they're very passionate about what they do. And they started out doing it for their own family plots in their home state. And then friends said, hey, you did such a great job. Can you do ours? So they did. And long story short, it became so much that they ended up turning it into their livelihood. And now they travel all over the Midwest.
It's interesting. But they're uncovering history. It's sentimental, but there's a lot of history in this cemetery. This marker, you said, was for someone who was in the Civil War.
Correct.
Who survived the Civil War and went on to have a family. Their family names are on the marker, their birth dates, their ages when they died. And that's throughout the cemetery, isn't it?
That's true. And tying the community to its history starts right here. Mm-hmm. And as you can see how unique some of these memorials to that history are. This individual here was a Civil War veteran. He was a member of the Iron Brigade. And had you not actually visited or known that history, you wouldn't really know it. And if the markers are left to decay underground where they end up getting covered, then of course you lose a little bit of that history. Mm-hmm. So being able to bring that back, it adds the former glory to the cemetery, mm-hmm. but it also, being right in the middle of the community, it, like you said, ties it to its history.
Well, you can walk through here and you can see the clean markers, so those are the ones that were restored. But how do you get the funding for this?
Okay, well, originally we applied for different fundings. We've looked for grants, that kind of thing, but we were able to secure it under some limited CIP funding. And so we broke it down into 2 phases. We did the first phase in 2013, which netted, I believe, 27 different restorations. And then this year we were up to almost 40 here in the cemetery. And they do stand out. The Italian marble, once it's cleaned, which is a very labor-intensive process, they do it all by hand. And you have to be very careful because the Italian marble is a wear type stone. So if you're not very gentle and careful with it, you'll actually do more damage restoring it than you are than not. So they do stand out. So as you come through the cemetery, the ones that are a lot brighter generally are the ones that were recently restored.
Mm-hmm. And you were telling me earlier off camera that you recently, but you have some volunteers that helped you uncover. And tell which one they recently uncovered. I think it's very interesting.
Well, a citizen that actually lives in this neighborhood, Peggy, she and also John Kelkerts both volunteer their time. But Peggy has uncovered probably pushing 170 to 200 markers that have either been lost to time, either from just wear, they were vandalized and broke, or they tipped over. And so she's recently uncovered Dr. Horst White's marker, and which of course is what the city park downtown is named after. Mm-hmm. And it was in a very deteriorated state, but it was just enough that we were able to restore it. And so that brought back a little bit of history that was, and I mean, when I say covered, it was under grass. And most of the ones that are restored were in that state. So just the fact that she's volunteering and getting them uncovered is it's been a huge asset.
I'll say.
And a contribution on their part.
I'll say. And you pointed out earlier a handshed headstone.
Yes.
There's just a lot of history over here. I know that Bill Bolgren has a tour that he usually does once a year. It's probably we missed it for this year, but he has tons of history, and sure he shares that with anybody who asks.
And actually, corresponding with Bill, that's how the Hanchett marker was restored. I was looking for input from him on his tours and on his history knowledge here, if there was any that were not there, and he mentioned that. So we researched it, and actually that became kind of easy because Peggy had already discovered it on her own and uncovered it, not knowing it was the Hanchett marker, but she had uncovered it. So that made it, one, easy to locate. Two, that was another one that had been in there so long that it was borderline, but because of its historic value, we were able to restore it.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite marker?
I do. It's the one with the pillars. We'll have to show you that here in a little while. That if I got to pick a favorite, that would be it. But there's so many of them here that are so unique in their own way. These style of memorials, they just don't make them anymore. They don't do this style, the intricacy, the beauty that they bring. The granite ones are nice now that you have, but it's a whole different style. So it's like a whole different art.
Yes, it is. And some of these tell a story just standing there by themselves. I mean, obviously this was a family. They have the little angel up at the top, and some of the names that are on here are of children, several months old who passed away. So I think it's just very interesting to see what you can find out just by looking at a marker.
You're right. Well, sometimes just the name on the memorial will tell a story. I think I've seen every school name that we have in the city in here. Street names, city center is like Strong, there's Strong Stadium, and so as you go through here, you'll see a name that you automatically recognize because it's part of the community still to this day. Some of the Fairbanks are here, the Morrises are here, the Wheelers with the original Eclipse windmill factory, where the Eclipse name comes from. All that history is right here.
It's right here. So if a person, I know you're always looking for funding, if someone wants to help fund this or just make a donation, or if they're interested in a particular restoration, who can they contact for that?
They can contact the cemetery office.
Okay.
And if they would like to sponsor a restoration, we could show them the price, the fee rates, and for the sizes and how much they want to restore. And then we can actually add that to the contracting at the next cycle.
And what number should they call?
608-364-2867.
Well, I know that there's lots more to talk about. There's a lot of stories, a lot of history, but we have to wrap up because our time is limited. But I want to thank you so much, and I hope you'll have a chance to take the camera team around to show them a few more spots.
Absolutely. You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Well, that wraps up another show. I think we gave our viewers a lot of things to think about today.
Absolutely. Voting, driver safety, lots of information on Oakwood Cemetery.
Well, I think Rebecca had a ton of information about voter registration and information, and certainly all that information's on our website.
Yes, but make sure, most importantly, bring your ID with you when you go to vote on November 4th.
Absolutely. This little ID?
That's not going to work,
That's not going to work. Okay, bring your driver's license or some other picture ID, like Rebecca said. And in closing, we just wanted to mention that we probably won't have anyone on the show this time from Visit Beloit, so we just want people to remember that the final farmers market of the year, sadly, is October 25th. And on that day, the fun part is the costume parade of the children. They leave at starts at 10 o'clock. They depart from Horace White Park, and they proceed into the downtown. There's music and entertainment and treats and snacks. So
yes, it's fun for everybody.
I think so. Yeah, lots of fun. So, do anything else?
Nothing else other than remember to vote on November 4th. And if you need voter information, check our website. And then also, if you are interested in more information on the restoration, make sure you contact Bob at the cemetery.
Thank you. Have a good week, or a good month. Have a good month.